What's up YouTube? I'm Steven and this is Trendy Tech Talk. On today's episode we'll be answering the age-old question, what's better at cooling your CPU, air or water? Representing air today we have the Noctua NH-D15 and the Chromax Black, very nice. For water we have the ROG Strix LC240 RGB, which is actually the unit that I've been running in my personal rig. I decided to go with 240 versus 360. I felt it would be a little bit more fair. We have tons of constants, tons of configurations, tons of things to go over, lots of data. Let's get into it. All right, first, let's look at all of our constants. Let's go ahead and take a gander. All right, our constant being my main rig, which will be sporting an Intel 10th Gen i7 that has not been overclocked, an ROG Strix Z498 motherboard, and 4 Corsair QL140 non-static pressure fans that will be in the system the entire time in the exhaust configuration. We'll have 3 up top, 1 in the back. We'll be getting our intake through the front with various configurations that'll be set up based off of whatever test we're running, in a room that'll be roughly 74 degrees Fahrenheit or 23 degrees Celsius. We'll be using a professional decibel meter that was picked up off of Amazon. We have a noise floor of roughly 32 to 33 decibels, which isn't the most quiet, but it's not the loudest. I'm going to test the snap really quick so you can see its reaction. Sorry if that was a little loud. To stress test the CPU, we'll be using the application 3D Mark on a custom CPU benchmark that'll be looped for 20 minutes. To monitor the data, we'll be using HWinfo64. Once that 20 minutes concludes, we'll gather the data, we'll shut down the PC for 1 hour to allow the CPU to cool down. After that hour has elapsed, we'll set up the next configuration and run the test, repeat the process again. And last but not least, we use a pea-sized application of Thermal Grizzly's Cryonaut, which is a fantastic thermal paste. So now that we have listed out all of our constants, let's run some data. Our first set of configurations are going to be involving the ROG Strix LC240 AIO. This one will be push-pull method with Corsair QL120 non-static pressure fans. Push-pull essentially means that the front fans will be pushing air through the radiator and the back fans will be pulling air through the radiator and exhausting that air into the case. After our 20 minutes elapsed, we had a peak fan noise around 48.1 decibels, a high temperature reaching 75 degrees Celsius with an average temperature of 63 degrees Celsius. The next method will be push with our Corsair QL120 non-static pressure fans pushing air through our ROG Strix 240 radiator. During the 20-minute test, we saw a max noise level of 48.3 decibels, a high temperature of 81 degrees Celsius, and an average temperature of 67 degrees Celsius. I'll begin overlaying the other temperature results in the back so you can see how they are stacking up before we look at the final data at the end. Note, I won't be doing the same for sound levels, and we'll talk about that later. Now moving those same Corsair QL120 fans from the front to the back, we will now be using the pull method in which the fans are pulling air through the radiator. After the 20 minutes, we saw a max noise level of 49.5 decibels, a high temperature of 79 degrees Celsius with an average of 66 degrees Celsius. Now we're moving to the static pressure fans, which are made to move air through a radiator. They are rated to be a little bit louder, so we'll see how that stacks up. The first configuration for the static pressure fans will be the pull method, as they pull air through the radiator. After 20 minutes, we saw a max noise level of 44.7 decibels, a max temperature of 70 degrees Celsius, and an average of 58 degrees Celsius. The last test on the AIO, we have the push method with the same ROG static pressure fans, pushing air through the radiator. After 20 minutes, we saw a max noise level of 46.1 decibels, a max temperature of 70 degrees Celsius, and an average of 59 degrees Celsius. Next, we'll be testing the Air King, the Noctua NH-D15, using the standard connection Y cable, then with the low noise adapters to see if there are any differences. I decided to use the Corsair QL120s up front because I threw the stock case fans in there and they were completely blowing up the noise test. we have them exhausting air towards the Noctua, through it and out the case's rear exhaust. After 20 minutes of testing with the standard Y connection, we have a max noise level of 44.9 decibels, a high temperature of 75 degrees Celsius, and an average of 63 degrees Celsius. Now, using the same configuration, but connecting the low noise adapters, after 20 minutes we reached a max noise level of 43.7 decibels, a high temperature of 76 degrees Celsius, with an average of 65 degrees Celsius. Alright, now that we have all the data, let's kind of digest this. But first, if this is the kind of content that you like to see, please like and subscribe and hit the bell notification. Okay, so looking at all this data, I'm not surprised at all if we just kind of focus on water for a second, right? So we have our Corsair non-static pressure fans, and we also have our ROG fans that are static pressure that actually came with this kit that are meant to push or pull air through that radiator. So was I surprised that these fans outperformed any kind of configuration in the Corsair fans? Absolutely not. Now, was I surprised that the Noctua NH-D15 outperformed the Corsair configurations of fans? Yes, I was, because that's kind of how I had my fans set up previously to making this video. Getting back to this, I didn't put too much value in the sound level tests. It wasn't the perfect environment to have a sound level test. There was a lot of noise interference, AC kicking on, lots of different fans in here that could potentially be making the case louder. So we have a rough kind of number as far as what we could use to determine which fans were louder. And obviously we could see the data here, but audibly, me being next to the computer, I couldn't really tell the difference. The Noctua did have more of a staggered hum, if that makes sense. I wish I could have captured it on my microphone, but for some reason it wasn't doing it very well. Maybe when I'm running this next test, I'll find a better way to have it replicate. Also, this thing is a monster. Getting it to fit in this case, which is the Fractal Define 7, was a pain and a half. I had to stagger the fans. It was hitting my Dominator RAM, or it was hitting the front glass. There were a lot of different things. So this thing would not make the prettiest of setups in this particular case with my particular RAM. Now, if I change some things around, I could probably get it to work, but that didn't work for me. So we see the noise levels. We could kind of throw that out the window. It's not throw it out the window. We could look at it, not take it for anything more than a grain of salt. And yeah, so we'll pull up high temperatures here. We'll pull up average temperatures here. And I'm really not surprised at all what I'm seeing here. The lowest average temperatures being the static pressure fans, and the Corsair non-static pressure fans were all pretty much in line with the Noctua, whether it be the regular Y cable or the Y cable with the noise reduction. Looking at high temperatures, like I said previously, I was a little bit shocked that it made that big of a difference between the Corsair QLs in whatever configuration and the static pressure fans, but also within that same vein, that the Noctua performed so well relative to the temperatures that all of them had together. So all in all, water still is your best option, especially if you set it up correctly, especially if you're using the static pressure fans that it comes with, because it was probably designed to run that way magically, right? If y'all do want to see the data that the Noctua fan is running with the AMD 5950, let me know down below, and that's a video I could get for y'all. So yeah, until next time.